Not much is known about the gangster Salvatore Maranzano, but this picture is disputed, though. This one is the one I've known. I didn't even realize it was disputed until I was working on this video. The only picture that we can be sure of, though, is the death picture. So, but what is known is that he was from Castellamare di Golfo, which is in the Trapani province of Sicily, which is right next to Palermo on the eastern part of Sicily. Palermo is important. When is Palermo not important? I ain't really. But I'll show that later. Though it's not because some of the gangsters who had him whacked were from there. You know, Corleone actually, there's a lot of mafiosi from Corleone. Well, Salvatore Maranzano has been portrayed in movies and TV shows, though. The story is that he immigrated to New York City working for Vito Ferro, who was a mafia boss in Sicilia looking to take control of the New York mob. Now, Ferro was from Bisiquino in the Palermo province, also where the fictional Barone family is from.
She lives in a place called Bisiquino. It's in Sicily, near Palermo.
As well as the subject of a future video on famous Sicilians, the director of It's a Wonderful Life. Maranzano started the Castellamarese War in New York City in 1930 to get control over the New York mob. And it's so named because Maranzano was from Castellamare in Trapani. He had his chief rival Joe the Boss Masseria whacked on April 15, 1931.
Took so long.
Traffic the whole way.
Had to be done, right?
Now, Salvatore Maranzano, who had studied the Roman Empire, kind of fascinated by it, then set up the New York mob as 5 families. Called a commission where he declared himself the boss of the entire New York mob. I'm guessing some saw this as kind of greedy.
What's with all the greed here? It's unattractive.
So, his main lieutenants, including Lucky Luciano, also from Sicilia, planned a hit on him for 10 September 1931 at his office. Now, his assassins pretended to be government agents who stabbed him multiple times before shooting him. We got the evidence here in this picture. Again, the only picture we can confirm is actually Salvatore Maranzano. So Maranzano immigrated about 1920, mid-20s, though the actual date is unknown and there are no records. Being a criminal, he probably traveled under a different name or, a fake name. Now, I did find this Ellis Island record, which could be his family. I'm convinced it is. I'm pretty certain that it is. We know his wife is Elisabetta, and the names of his children line up with Salvador and Elisabetta's parents. See, the European naming tradition is to name the firstborn and, the secondborn after the noni, the grandparents. So all that lines up from what we know. Now, because I was aware of the gangster Salvatore Maranzano, I was already familiar with the name. And when you start really getting into family history, you notice names. So now my family, of course, as you know, is from Carini, which is in the Palermo province, and there are Maranzanos. I have cousins who are Maranzanos, and so there's 64 on my tree now. Not so much when I started working on the video, though. I was looking for the immigration and naturalization records for Salvatore Maranzano, and I did find this record with a Salvatore Maranzano from Carini. No relation, though. Now, some people I noticed when I got onto Family Search that some people have done some work on Maranzano's line, so they had to go back pretty far. Now, I did add some names, but most of what I did was to confirm what was already listed with the original records. Now, there were mistakes, there tend to be, but for the most part, whoever did it got a lot of it right. But it does take a few interesting turns, especially when considering people did not move around nearly as much, 150 plus years ago, especially like 300 years ago. I have my Randazzo family in Carini well into the 1500s, so many of them lived and died in never leaving. Well, I don't know if they never left, but they lived and died there. While Maranzano was born in Castellamare di Golfo, his family had not been there very long, as I'll show. His mother's line eventually goes back to Trapani province from Palermo, though, but I'll get into that. Now, his parents are Domenico Maranzano and Antonino Pesciata. I found their 31 July 1861 marriage record in Castellammare del Golfo. Salvatore's nonni are Mariano Maranzano and Angelo Navarro and Angelo Pesciata and Giuseppe Benatti. Now, to keep things brief and interesting, I'm only going to show Salvatore's maternal line, the Pesciata family, since there's some really cool and unexpected connections I found. Now, I do have Angelo's baptism record and the marriage record, which confirmed they are not from Castellammare del Golfo, Trapani, but instead they are from where Sonny Bono's family is from. Yeah, that's Sonny Bono. And that is Montelepre in the Palermo province. Palermo important. Now, I did a video already about Sonny. It is linked in the description. My series of videos on famous Sicilians. I'm guessing Giuseppe is also, but I can't find a baptism record, but the marriage record does say she is from Palermo also. So it makes sense that she is probably from Montelepre. They were married 12 February 1840 in Alcamo, which is Trapani, about 6 miles from Castellammare del Golfo. Now we're going to really start getting back here. The marriage record confirmed the names of Angelo's parents as genitori and where they're from. Angelo and Giuseppe being Salvatore's nonni, his grandparents. His bisnonni or great-grandparents are Vincenzo, Giovanni, Salvatore Pesciata, and Antonina Catalano. Vincenzo was born on November 10, 1764 in Montelepre, the Palermo province. They were married in Montelepre on January 22nd, 1792, and this, of course, confirmed who the parents were. Vincenzo's parents are Giuseppe Pesciata and Pietra Adizia. Now, for his father, Giuseppe, I could not find his baptism record, so I looked for his death record. And it's July 20th, 1785. And he confirmed that he had a second wife, Francesca Candela. And this is interesting because he died right before his daughter. In fact, the one directly below his is probably his daughter, Rosalia, dying 3 days. 3 days! Yeah, 3 days after he did. Now, this is a real... they didn't use the wife's maiden names on the death records, but I'm pretty certain I have the right people, though. So I know Giuseppe died on the 20th of July, 1785. The Montelepre death record, thankfully, has his age. Now, I know that it's not necessarily correct, but it does have his age down in 60, so he was born around 1724, which is what I saw on Family Search, but I could not find a baptism record, and I looked from 1720 to like 1730. There's no Giuseppe Pesciata listed in those 10 years. But I did find his 1774 marriage record, and while I could not find his marriage record to Pietra Adizia, Pietra was listed on the second marriage record because they did put the spouse's name on the record, which is really cool. Now, this brings us to a real surprise connection. This is something I did not expect. I was just going to do a video about a famous, Sicilian mobster, and did not expect this. This is really cool. Obviously, Giuseppe's parents are listed on the 1774 marriage record, but again, they didn't use the mother's maiden name. But they are Francesco Pesciata and Rosaria Merendino. Yeah, I said Merendino. All right, people who follow the channel know where this is going. Merendino normally would get my attention. Okay, if I see that on a record, it's very closely related to Mia Familia the Gagaiano, Mia Nonna. But see, I had already known there was a Merendino and a surprise connection because I checked to see what my relation was, if any, just for the hell of it, to Salvatore Maranzano. So when I first found him on Family Search, there's a really cool feature on Family Search, but I'll get to that in a second. So Francesco and Rosaria Merendino were both born in Montelepre. But I was only able to find Rosaria's September 27, 1697 Montelepre baptism record. So we're at Salvatore's 3-time great-grandparents. Now, I looked through the Montelepre marriage records and could not find Francesco and Rosaria's marriage record. And a few accounts had them married in 1716. But since I had Rosaria's 1697 baptism record, I have her parents' names, and thankfully, her parents did not have very common names. Blasio and Domenica, right? So that's not that, yeah, and put those two together, that's really uncommon. That's always a good thing when you're doing family history research, you're doing historical research. And here's the surprise. I couldn't believe this. This is their November 17th, 1688 marriage record. And it's not in Montelepre. No, it's in Carini, where my family's from. Carini is not far from Montelepre. It's only about 6 miles. So the really cool feature here on Family Search is when you can find the relation to somebody else on the tree. When I did the Family Search relation to Salvatore Maranzano, it came out that we're 8th cousins. Now, I know. That's very, very distant. It's like practically not even related. I get it, but we're still 8th cousins. But just as cool is his maternal line at one point was living in Carini. Now, Blasio was baptized in Carini on the 3rd of February, 1662. Blasio and Domenica are Salvatore's 4th great-grandparents. And so Blasio Marandino is a second cugino 9 times removed from me through mia nonna, Caterina Gagaiano. So when you do this feature on Family Search, when you find the relation, it shows the line exactly how you are related. And so as I just said, it's through my Gagaiano line, and it goes through from my grandmother all the way to Croce Gagaiano's wife. Croce Gagaiano being like her 5th great-grandfather, and great-grandmother Olympia de Fazio. Now, the line does go back to Trapani, as Blasio's father is Santo Marandino, who is from El Como, Trapani, and he married Geroloma Rubino in Carini. So that is pretty cool to find such a connection and trace this infamous gangster back to Carini, Sicilia. So those are some unknown facts about Salvatore Maranzano, the boss of bosses, or the capo di tutti capi. He was the boss of bosses for a few months anyway. Hey, but thanks for watching, and now...
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.